All right, we are recording. I'm assuming, yeah. All I'm getting here are going to be punks for this one. It is August the 9th of 2015, and that means it's time for another episode of the VGF podcast. We have our usuals here, myself, Tazy 10. We have Jere, communicating in at least 5 different ways. He's lost his voice recently, so mostly he's going to he'll be running in the background for the most part. But with us as well is Scotty McGee, a regular at VGF.
Hello, everybody.
Right, so before we get onto the topic at hand, there's the usual way that we start the podcast, and that's by talking about what games we've been playing recently. I think this time, Scotty, how about you start off?
Great, because there's a lot of games that I'm actually juggling around right now. The first one I'm playing is the Super Mario, because I'm doing the VGF speedrunning Super Mario games. So I have Super Mario World, still works on my Super NES, and I've been playing that. And I've never really sped through a platformer before, so that felt interesting. And it almost felt kind of wrong to speed run like Super Mario World, because as I was playing I was like, wow, I'm like at the end already, and like I feel like Super Mario World is more like it's meant for you to explore like everything you find, but like if you strictly go through towards Bowser, it's like, oh, that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Super Mario isn't really one of those games that's made to for you to speed through. You're mostly meant to just kind of go at a sort of brisk pace, jumping over obstacles and like going in the pipes and stuff like that. It's not really a speedy game. I would say that's more like a game like Donkey Kong Country or something of the sort, where like it seems like the game is made for you to just hold. It's like made to keep you moving at all times. But in Super Mario, it seems more like there are times where you're meant to just kind of jump around and enjoy or like take part, like in.
Yeah, it's more like stop and smell the roses kind of thing. Like you're just ambling along. It's not really like, it doesn't feel like a race or like you're panicking per se.
Yeah. Like, in fact, there's even like an enemy made to punish you for trying to rush forward. Like, the Hammer Brother will completely stop you if you aren't paying attention and just running ahead.
And so after that, I'm also playing, because I always take part in that Gentlewoman's Challenge that Thanos usually hosts.
Oh, yeah.
To finish games from your backlog. And last month we tried, like, it was me, Boo, and Thanos, and like none of us finished anything, but I was playing The Last Story. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's an RPG.
Oh, yeah, I've kind of heard about it. It was along with, it was part of the whole Operation Rainfall thing with Pandora's Tower and Xenoblade Chronicles.
Yeah, it has that. I could tell that like some people from Xenoblade Chronicles probably made it, but I don't. Wait,
I don't think it was the same group, but it was just like it was all bunched together because it was 3 games that were never released in the West.
Right.
Or like, I think it was the West, or it was anywhere but Japan.
Right.
Or, like, that wasn't released. So.
And I remember being attracted to it because I read about it somewhere, and it sounded like a good idea at the time, and then I actually bought it and started playing it. And when I first started playing it, I was like, this is cool. And then for some reason, when I was playing it now for the challenge, I was like, God, this is awful. This is horrendous. Why did I think this was... There's a lot that I can go on this game, but it's very, how do I say it? It's very, like, not really tutorial-ish, but just, like, it goes by chapters, right? It's literally like playing through a storybook, and it's assumed that, like, there's some other world forces that the characters are, like, unaware of, and so it goes by chapters, and there's this one chapter, for example, where you just do nothing. You're just like walking around and like experiencing cutscenes. And I was like, well, this is kind of bland, and the battle system is. I don't know how to. Battle system's really weird. It's like free roaming, and like you use because it's on the Wii, and you use like the nunchuck to like move around, and like you use the joystick on the nunchuck to just attack people. But I don't know. It kind of clashes together.
Wait,
It doesn't really feel good.
you use the nunchuck to move around, but you use the control stick on the nunchuck to attack?
Yeah, kind of. Actually, come to think of it, I probably wasn't paying attention how you attack, but it's really weird. Like you just approach the person, like you target an enemy, and you just like approach them, and you just kind of like move around the joystick on the nunchuck to like attack them and stuff.
I hope it does something.
Yeah,
That seems really weird.
I know. It's kind of like the controls kind of are conflicting, and I've got to say though, like probably the only good thing about it is like the graphics, and it's probably like the best looking game on the Wii. But I think that's also like I think sometimes the game is like trying to push the limits of the Wii at times because it can get glitchy. Because there was this one time where there's like a cover system, so you can like hide behind walls and tables and stuff, and you can do sneak attacks. And I was hiding behind a table, and there was these two guys right in front of me, and I was like, okay, let me go jump on them. So like, I jumped, and I did this twirl, and then all of a sudden, I find myself in an empty room, and I'm like, what the hell? How'd I get in here? And I just realized that I literally, like, the game glitched as I jumped over, and I twirled into a room, and I couldn't get out of the room because it was locked. Like, the only way you could have opened that room was if one of your teammates like came in and opened it, but I just accidentally went in there, and that was really annoying because I thought I thought I was screwed then. I thought I had to like restart from the whole game, but luckily there was a checkpoint and stuff. So, but yeah,
Thank
my
goodness for
opinion of
small favors.
my opinion of that game like plummeted within like a couple weeks after continuing it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how that turned out. To be fair, Xenoblade was getting all of the popularity when Operation Rainfall was going along. Strange how, like, of those three games, only one of them really managed to get like all that far. The other two just fell to the wayside almost immediately when they came out.
What was the other one besides the last story?
Pandora's Tower.
Never heard of that.
Yeah. I forgot what people thought of that one. I guess that's just, I guess that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, so right now we restarted the Gentleman, Gentlewoman's Challenge thing, and I'm back to playing Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga for the game.
Oh yeah, that's actually a pretty good RPG.
Yeah, that was really good. That was the first challenge that I did. I think it was Thanos who gave it to me, but I actually ended up not finishing it. So now I've been assigned to it again, and I think I'll finally be able to finish it. But it's a good game. Yeah, I like it. I liked it a lot.
And it's pretty short as far as RPGs go, but they do like put a lot in there as far as I'm concerned.
Well, like side quests and stuff like that.
Pretty much. A lot of the stuff they do in the game is made to be played during the story. There's not any post-game to speak of in Superstar Saga. And as far, and like, if you know what to do, you can pretty much break that game almost immediately.
Cool.
You get over-leveled like nobody's business, and there's like, advanced swing bros can get you like items that are incredibly useful to you at certain points in the game. But that's mostly just because it's that's stuff that was figured out like later or something, and it's sort of this you wouldn't know unless someone told you sort of thing.
I see. Yeah, it's funny because the first time I got that game, it was like what? How old was that game? Like 2004, five, something around there.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, I was a lot worse at RPG, so I remember being stuck at this one thing, and I'm like, I can't win, and so like I dropped it for like ever. But now that I'm older, more experienced RPG gamer, and so it's a lot easier.
It is a strange combination of, to be fair, yeah, like Mario has always been this sort of, we need to adapt a platforming game into an RPG, and each game kind of goes at it a different way. And Mario and Luigi just kind of was like, how about we just make everything kind of dependent on you being able to jump and use your hammer.
Pretty much.
So, in that respect, it's a very like fresh way of looking at an RPG. Unfortunately, as of right now, I'm kind of losing my will to really care about that series so much because
Yeah, I heard that there are other games in the series kind of suck. I've never played anything outside the series from the first game.
Partners in Time, I was fine with Partners in Time, but maybe it was just because I mostly just was like playing it exclusively and just wasn't expecting too much more out of it than the last game. Bowser's Inside Story was alright, but once I got to the post-game part and they were like expecting me to beat like 7 bosses in 20 turns, I lost all will to care. And I started a bit of Dream Team just to test the cartridge, and it's alright so far, but I've heard differing reports that it's either better than like most of the games in the series, or it's the worst one of the lot. Or it's basically Bowser's Inside Story again. I have no idea. But I've heard that with Paper Jam coming out, they have to like do something really interesting with that. So maybe we'll see.
It's funny, when I first saw the thread about Super Mario Paper Jam, I just thought it was like some college humor video or something about Mario and Luigi in the office, and there's like a paper jam and a copier machine or something like that. But then when I saw that it was a game, I was like, oh, I'm kind of somehow more disappointed now.
I guess.
So yeah, that's pretty much all I've been playing.
Right. Yes, Jared? Yes, so Jared's been playing Skyrim.
Cool.
That pretty much it from you? Yeah. This is kind of the problem from him conversing with me in 5 different ways. I have to relay to the audience what is going on. But anyway, as for me, I haven't been doing much game playing lately. I've had to assist in moving someone else into our house recently, so
That's always fun.
To be fair, that also means she's going to be paying part of the rent, so like everyone's going to be paying less. But she's like my sister's friend, and she kind of knows mostly everybody better than me. So it's something I'm just going to have to get used to. But in the meantime, I've been to kind of offset the fact of like all the games I bought during the summer sale and like stuff I haven't put on my backloggery yet. I decided to try and like go after or attempt to try and beat a quick game so that I can like just put something and say that I beat it really fast. And I ended up putting and the fortune cookie on the backloggery site gave me NCAA basketball for the Super Nintendo, which has names in every other region, different names. I think one's called College Slam, and I think I can look it all up if I get like a second. It's called NCAA basketball here in the United States. It's called World League Basketball in Europe and Super Dunk Shot in Japan. It's a game made by HAL America, and I had no idea of that sort of connection at the time. But this was like a game I got in my childhood, and I don't know if you know, but like back when I had a Super Nintendo, I wasn't really up to date on what games were really cool during that
Oh my
era.
god. Oh my god, same here. I bought all the stupid games when I was like little. I got like Batman Forever and like some stupid Looney Tunes animation studio game. I don't even know what the name is, but like all these crappy crud games, and I'm like,
Acme
why?
Animation Studio. I
Yeah,
also got Batman Forever.
I was like, why
'Cause
wasn't I smarter when I was a kid? Why didn't I get Chrono Trigger or A Link to the Past or something like that? But
I swear I played like a lot of games, but I mostly just bought that stuff that looked a lot of licensed stuff, like Separation Anxiety, starring Spider-Man and Venom. Bunch of like stuff like that. But that was mostly because I wasn't really, like I said, I wasn't really into what people thought were good games at the time. But NCAA basketball it's weird in a sense. It's kind of, the thing is, it's this weird transition between games like NBA Jam, which were like a flat surface and people ran from the left side or the right side of the screen to try and shoot like baskets, and 3D basketball games of today. It's a weird like transition because it mostly uses Mode 7. So you're mostly in this blue cube with a basketball court in the middle, and you just kind of like, the camera stays behind the player at all times. So whenever the basketball changes hands, the camera will shift 180 degrees to get to the opposing team's back. So it's kind of weird. I've said that like 10 times, but that's really kind of the best description of it. But unfortunately, it's also, I really don't, to be fair, to play it, there's not really much you need to beat it. You just need to take a team all the way to the finals and then win. You basically have to play through the playoffs and win. But,
yeah, I don't have much to say about sports games other than the only sports games I've played are like Mario Tennis and Mario Super Strikers and stuff like that.
Yeah. But I don't think I would say it's not very good, because most of the time when I was playing it, it was kind of like I would have to rely on the AI messing itself up. There's no indication for when you're stealing the ball, and sometimes you'll just get, as a result, sometimes you'll be like that meant that I mostly was just mashing the button whenever someone got the ball, and that mostly resulted in me getting fouled.
It's just like, give it to me.
The game kind of has a problem with conveyance in that respect. And most of the time, whenever I had the ball, my idea was, get around all the defenders by using my own players to block them and then run to the basket and then slam dunk the ball, because the way I saw it, there was no way to stop someone once they basically were like, I'm going to slam dunk the ball. Bam. What's even weirder is that I never saw any way to block that, but sometimes the planets align, the clouds open up, and there's a shining ray of light. You go for the slam dunk, and then suddenly it just bounces off the rim for some reason, and I have no idea why it happens.
Wah, wah, wah.
Doesn't just happen to me, it happened to the AI first. It happened to me once. Just once. And I have no idea what happened. I was expecting 2 points, and then suddenly there's the sound where it bounces off the rim and just flies out the guy's hand. But yeah, that was what I played this last couple of weeks, because I was mostly busy with my free time. But speaking of free time, that's mostly what we're here to talk about today. I'm getting confirmation from Jere. We're mostly going to be spending this time talking about other hobbies and interests besides video games, because, let's be honest, there's only so much time we can just, we're not always going to spend our time playing, video games or doing stuff like that. We have other interests. It's expected for the most part. Even if that's mostly what we do with our free time, there's other hobbies or things that we do to just kind of waste time. And besides, you need something to do when the electricity goes out, eventually. You're going to go insane. You know? So, I suppose I can kind of start.
Yeah, go ahead.
Especially, first of all, we can go with the most boring thing. When I'm not playing video games, I tend to try and, I mostly read, like, the books that everyone else has, because when we moved in, we kind of all realized we all have a whole bunch of books. And mostly, like, a bunch of...
It's like, hey, look at these things. These non-electronic things.
Everyone has books, and, like, mostly the same books. But, me,
well,
I mostly
Harry
just
Potter
had, like,
stuff.
I mostly just had a bunch of, like, video game magazines and stuff, and a few things, and a few, like, books I would get when I was a kid, or, like, when I needed them for, like, school projects. But that's mostly mostly because I never had the space for actually having a collection of books. My sister and a couple of her roommates and the other roommates all had space for books, so they have this bookshelf in the other room where it's just filled with books. Most of it is manga, but there's at least one shelf fully that we could fill with just like regular reading books. But
Yeah, I got into reading with Star Wars stuff. Like, up until I was in, like, high school, all I read was Star Wars. That was just my range of literature. And then I realized there were other stuff. But, yeah.
yeah, it is the thing is about all these books. They seem they kind of hit on the same idea. Like every single series of books that we have are basically it's modern day and it's supernatural elements. So and it's all centered on like a main character somewhere. We have I don't know if Jared's even gonna be able to keep up with the groups of like I don't know if most people would, but like we have all of the Dresden Files books up to now. We have what's it called? Kate Daniel books. There's all the books by Ilona Andrews, I think is her name.
The only thing I'm familiar with is Dresden Files, but I haven't even read those.
Everyone but me has read the Dresden File books, which I've mostly not.
Isn't there like a TV show or something, or am I?
I think there was a short-lived like series. I think.
Oh, and it was one of those things that just plummeted, just sucked right away.
Yeah. To be fair, I haven't like tried to get into it either because because it seems like no one has like the house seems to agree that Dresden isn't exactly on a very high point right now.
Oh, is it like one of those things that have been going on for so long that it's kind of like dying down, kind of?
So, yeah, pretty much. It seems kind of like I think one moment that really like annoyed my sister was there's this one moment where like I don't remember exactly, but it was like where Dresden is in a tight spot, but then like I think like there's like an important character and then he just does something and you're not warned about it at all, and then like the next part of the book is like them explaining how that makes sense instead of them like warning you or like giving you any sort of heads up beforehand, because it kind of ruined the mystery of the game, when otherwise it was she wanted the story to kind of make it so she could figure it out, and like with this move it made it so there was no way you could tell unless you read the book once already. It felt like a cheap move to her. But right now, currently I'm reading the series of books by one Kevin Hearn, which is the Iron Druid Chronicles. And I'm gonna be honest, I really like that series. The story of, if you don't, Scotty, you said that you also read books. Before I end up basically going explain the entire Iron Druid Chronicles, how about you talk about a few books that you read or something to that effect?
I like to read a lot of literature, so like classics, which I'm gonna get into why, because I write stories, and so I think it's a good idea to get into the classics and how different narratives and genres have developed. And so stuff like Frankenstein, Dracula, Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft. I still have to read stuff from H.P. Lovecraft. I heard it's really good. Right now I'm reading a lot of old detective stories, and I don't know if you're familiar with Raymond Chandler. I'm reading The Big Sleep. It's basically stuff like that was written in the 40s that's like inspired film noir, like those kind of detective stories like the Maltese Falcon and stuff, which I've also read. And as far as fantasy and sci-fi go, the funny thing is that I haven't really read a lot of fantasy and sci-fi aside from like big name stuff like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit. Oh, Hitchhiker's Guides. I love the Hitchhiker's Guides to the Galaxy. That's great.
I forgot which book Jen said was an absolute chore to read. Whichever one, I don't know if it was both, but it was like, I think it was The Hobbit, because Jen said that like every other page it just kind of stopped to have a song.
Well, no, that's more like the Lord of the Rings.
No, okay, no, it was Lord of the Rings that just stopped to have a song.
Yeah, literally The Hobbit is like a bunch of men going, "Ho-la-di-da, let's go sing about the past and everything," and, backstory. Which, and when I was a kid, I actually hated that. I, like, started reading it, and I just, like, died falling asleep. But now that I'm older, I appreciated it more, and it was more bearable for me to read through. But The Hobbit is definitely a lot more fun because it's more kid-oriented, and I think Tolkien actually cared more about his characters. It feels more like a developing kind of thing than Lord of the Rings. Basically, feels like you're reading a history book, where it's just like, and then they did this, and then this happened, and then blah.
Yeah, right. There is a reason that the movies are basically 9 hours long if you watch them from the first to the last.
Yeah. And I've read a lot of Asimov stuff, like the Foundation series. And I love Philip K. Dick. So Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and other crazy stuff. I think that's about it for now. I don't really read much manga. I only really recently got into like comics and manga and stuff like that. Recent meaning like 2011 or so, maybe. And yeah, that's about it that I'm reading.
I guess before I end up I don't think I need to actually. I'm thinking back on it and thinking I don't need to go and start advertising Iron Druid Chronicles.
Go to your local bookstore today and buy Iron Druid.
Basically, the story, the idea behind the books is that it manages to be like, it manages to have its like being very. It takes this sort of balance between being very serious but also kind of comical at the same time. And it ended up like creating several moments throughout the book series that I just like to that I like so much. I've actually found myself rereading them constantly because there's a few really good like back and forths that come up between the characters at times. Like the first book is good, but like I'm told that like every book afterwards is just better after that. And I can tell you like I finished the second book. And that's like way better than the first. And I read a bit of the third one now, and that seems to be keeping up with the usual level I'm expecting now. So, if anything, it doesn't seem like I'm going. It seems like I'm just gonna keep going up from here. I'm not gonna get too into it now, but As for anything else that we do, actually, you might be. I don't know how surprised you would be to find out that I regularly am taking part in like tabletop games, role-playing tabletop. I didn't need the stock sound effect, but thank you, Jere. Role-playing tabletop games. Most of it is it mostly just happened because I'm now living in the same house with a bunch of people who do the same thing. And at that point, it's either I like take part or I just kind of sit here every Saturday and Thursday by myself. So there's not really much of a choice in mind to me, unless I want to be here alone. But but that mostly means that I'm involved in at least 4 role-playing games right now. There's one other one on Saturday that I don't go to, but that's pretty much equaling out to, there's 2 games centered on Dungeons and Dragons specifically. One's by someone who lives here. Like there's 2. The thing is, I need to explain. There's 2 that we run here. One of them is the one that I'm the game master in, and there's 2 that we have at a different house. But that's because it's with a whole different group of people that I only kind of know a little bit about. They're mostly like SmackDown Pete's friends. So, and they're all kind of they're people with jobs and families and stuff. So for the most part, when they show up, kind of depends on their own schedules. But since like half of the entire group is living in this house, usually we have enough people to get a game going, even if very few even if like something happens most of the time. But like I said, there's 2 games that are centered on Dungeons and Dragons. One played here, and one that you played went at the other house. There's one specifically on D20 Modern, which is it's basically just kind of a readaptation of Dungeons and Dragons played into modern day. Mm-hmm. And then there's one that I'm running, which is centered on Persona, actually, the Shin Megami Tensei franchise.
Oh, I've always wanted to play Persona, by the way. But keep going.
That one's a little more complicated because, well, for the most part, it's incomplete and made by someone who has just kind of upload stuff on a Reddit board. But I'm mostly just playing it as I go along, and I've managed to get some success. It's mostly just played with the 3 people who live in this house, because it kind of relies a little less on dice rolls, except in combat, and it mostly just relies on how you're able to deal with a situation. And you have to plan out a lot. But I guess that's the case with a lot of games. But it's strange because it's a weird take on the way I've always seen it is. I feel like games are a little better when it has an electronic companion for the most part, because I mean, like when you do it on something that can keep the rules for you, because otherwise you kind of get into this situation where you have to you have to understand the rules in order to play the game. But when you play it online, it's just kind of like you make moves and the game can the game, you don't have to worry about putting something in the wrong place or getting the wrong amount of chips or cards or something to that effect. But in Dungeons and Dragons, it kind of like you're just kind of expecting the dungeon master to do all the you're mostly just kind of playing by the rules of the dungeon master, which can pretty much mean anything. Like, it's kind of weird that
like do the chicken dance.
Well, it's kind of weird how this sort of idea goes.
Chicken dance.
It's kind of weird how that goes along, because everyone but me is kind of played way more games than me, and they've gone through with like people who are like, they're the kind of person who are playing against the players, and none of the people that I have like played a role-playing game with is actually like that. But they basically like it's this sort of philosophy of this person that was like, oh well, you could get a 20 at one, but like anything else, and you're pretty much dead.
Yeah, I very briefly experienced Dungeons and Dragons back in high school when I was in the sci-fi fantasy club. But I don't know if this is true because I never played D&D like ever after. But in every D&D game, do you always have to speak in third person? Like, do you always have to be like, Scotty does this now, blah, blah, blah?
Not really.
Okay, because that's what they did when I was playing, and I was like, oh god, I feel like an idiot. But that was back then when I was in high school, and I was more of an angsty teenager. But
it's very kind of more free form. We just kind of do what we want, and if we want to, and when it comes to role playing, it just kind of happens most of the time. It's kind of weird how people do this sort of their own rules on the subject. Like, there's a move called Power Word Kill in Dungeons and Dragons, which is what the spell is pretty much. Do you have more than 100 HP? No, you're dead. That's it. And there's entire books which seem to be that one of the DMs just doesn't want to deal with, and the couple that like no one wants to. And it's kind of weird how that is. I guess it's mostly just for fair's sake.
Pretty much like every dungeon master kind of has their own thing, kind of.
Yeah. And it's kind of weird how that comes out in a like a role playing and like how the game plays out in a sense. Like for one game, it's like we end up dealing with a big monster, this really big, powerful guy, and then like our mage goes, the ground's mud now, and then like he's stuck there for 15 turns and we destroy him. And then like there's the other game where it's like we have to fight like 5 mooks and like one guy who can like punch people and thunderbolt and like electricity comes out and we barely have to and we barely are able to deal with that. But it's kind of it's still kind of this weird idea for me where I gotta just sit there and let everything kind of. You're mostly at the mercy of the game itself, but you just kind of, if you very slightly make a change, you kind of slightly make your own impression on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of up to, and in that sense, it's like you kind of leave your part on the story, but otherwise it's kind of just like your fault.
Kind of like just winding it up and letting it go.
Yeah, for the most part.
I see.
I have been in like one. I've played through an entire game like once, and that was like it's a different tabletop game called Feng Shui, where the idea behind that one is it's a martial arts movie, an old cheesy camp martial arts movie. But the person who was playing that, I'll just let know that Jared proceeded to do a bunch of fake punches so that everyone can see them.
Oh yeah.
But the problem was that the person who was running the game is the person who lives in it's the person who owns the other house we go to, and the problem is he has 2 kids. And like a job that he has to be called for at any time. So he doesn't have really the time to run his own game. But, and as a result, most of the game was spent just kind of like, oh, okay. The problem is that, well, one, it's kind of a sequel to a game he ran before, and it was kind of a send-off to, like, all of the people who were, like, part of that game. Like, to give closure to that sort of story. So for the most part, I made a character expecting that we would spend a desirable amount of time, like a determinable amount of time in the real world, but in reality, we spent most of our time bumping around in, like, magical, mystical world, and then, like, everything went to hell once we got back, so there was no point in anything local at all. Most of the time we spent there was like, oh, you go over here. These people are dead. There's this person and this person and this person and this person, and like I'm just sitting here like, what? Like I was a journalist. I was writing things down, and when we got to the last fourth of the game, I just stopped.
Like whatever, just keep going.
He actually got upset that we weren't paying attention because he was just springing up for us from place to place and not really doing anything we care about. So he just blew our truck up and had us surrounded by gorillas for like a single, like one encounter.
Planet of the Apes all of a sudden happened.
So we had to work our way out of that situation. But other than that, it just kind of seemed like he was making us. He was just kind of like going through like certain ideas, but not. But he had ideas, and we fought, yeah. But for the most part, it was just like he had a way for us to do certain. He had us do certain tasks, but for the most part, a lot of the game was also out of our hands. Like there was a character who was poisoned with a deadly venom, and like he spent some time like making this kind of important, and then all of a sudden voice crack. All of a sudden, some guy just comes out of this, like the important character comes out of the sky. It's like, I have this antidote here. It doesn't even matter because the character that was
dubs.
the character that was poisoned died anyway at the final fight. Like he just kind of. When he could have just died there, he could have. He just saved him so that he could kill him later. I don't know if that was because he kind of just played by the was playing as he went along. But I don't know. Like it wasn't very good, and I didn't like it because it's all the characters kind of meshed together, and I didn't care that much about the story in the end, other than the fact that most of the villains was made around. That my character mostly cared about the villains, and that was it. Mm. And he had like just one moment where he did something, and that was it. But for the most part, I didn't. It mostly just didn't end to this story I wasn't a part of, and so I didn't care about the characters, and I mostly was just. I mean, like I almost didn't realize that the main villain was sitting right there until they told me he was the main villain. Which, okay. Meanwhile, like, the other, like, everyone else that I've ever played, like, a game with or so is kind of, like, they try their hardest to make the characters memorable. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a bounty hunter with white dreads, and then whenever she shows up, there's, like, British dubstep music that plays, or there's, like, an orc who runs a burlesque show, and his personality and voice is pretty much, that handsome devil, which is like some other someone
wow.
Which like and there's like some character in like the other Dungeons and Dragons game that's following us around, and he's like in a relationship with another player character, and he's also like he was evil once, so there's moments where he's just kind of like he kind of admits that he ate babies one time. And, like, all the games, like, have... It kind of tells that, like, these tabletop games kind of live or die depending on, like, how well the dungeon
looks
master...
pretty disturbed.
That these games kind of live and die depending on how well the dungeon master can roleplay. Right. It's weird how I usually, when I see like these sorts of like advertisements or like how you're supposed to play the game, and it kind of centers on, oh, you're going through dungeons, here how you go through dungeons and do these dungeon things and fight. But it seems like the idea to make these characters and give a reason to care about going through these, it's actually kind of funny because because it seems like almost no one cares about dungeons whenever I play games. It's just kind of like you go through these houses and there's very rarely do they actually like care about it being a dungeon with traps or enemies all around or stuff like that. It's just kind of like empty places and regular rooms, and you just kind of run come across things. Very rarely is there like a fight midway through, and you don't have to worry about looting a bunch of like treasure chests or anything. They definitely kind of
sound as fun.
Most of the fun is in just like interacting with the characters, and the fact that the fights are that actually makes the fights more important, because every fight is actually more to my level rather than here you fight a horde of rat men randomly running around. But to be fair, every time I've played these games, it's mostly like I've started up at a higher level than base. So like in one game, we're kind of like on the second half of the story, and on the other one, we all started at like level 10. So it was mostly like you have to deal with tough stuff from the get-go.
I see.
And I'm not saying there's no dungeons, it's just that like they don't try to make it big sprawling underground caverns. It's usually stuff you can be done with in 1 or 2 sessions. Like, it's usually just like a castle or a mansion or something to that effect.
Alright, cool.
And I've talked a lot.
I think Jere wants to move on.
I've talked enough about tabletop since I was about to end anyway. Scotty, is there anything else that you do on your free time?
Yes. My big hobby is writing. Now, I started writing way back when I was in like 6th grade. And it's funny because the reason why I started writing was through video games. And I wrote my first story, and it was called Super Yoshi, with like a question mark, instead of like Super Mario, because I was 5 years old or whatever, and I loved dinosaurs. So like
it's posing a question, it's like Super Yoshi?
Right, exactly. So I always wanted Yoshi to be the hero instead of Mario. So I just wrote off, and they were just ridiculous. It was like I still have to finish posting actually one of them in the Arts and Literature forum, which is Super Yoshi, and I just like, I stole from everything from like SpongeBob to James Bond and stuff. Like Yoshi was a spy and everything. He was like blowing up zombie Yoshis and stuff. Which, in retrospect, like that would actually be really awesome. But
it would be really awesome if you had come up with it at a later time.
Right. Not as like a 6th grader. But and then I didn't really seriously start writing like original work until I was in 8th grade. And once I reached high school, I totally drifted away from like the whole fan fiction stuff. And which, by the way, Nintendo fan fiction was what led me to VGF in the first place. Funny enough, because I went through Nintendo Land, and then I saw all those fanfics and stuff, and then stumbled upon VGF.
Technically, it's the same for me. I was mostly just enamored with the Nintendo Land death matches, and then that just caused me to be dragged into VGF as a whole.
Yeah, the death matches were fun.
Yeah.
And I started out writing parodies and stuff, which is funny because I didn't really read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Like, I didn't read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy until, like, I was in late high school or so. But the stuff I wrote was, like, having to do with people in space, and, like, all these crazy hijinks happen, and, one thing leads to another, and there's, like, it gets totally goofy. Like, the villain, even though this is, like, the year 3000, and like the villain had like Victorian clothing and stuff, and he had like a top hat and like an evil mustache and stuff like that. And then from sci-fi I got into fantasy, and most of the fantasy that I like writing is more like urban kind of fantasy. So like in modern day setting, and then they find some mysterious kingdom or something like that, blah blah blah. And aside from writing, I also like to film. And filming came up later, and I think it sort of came up as a product of writing, because I love film, and when I was in college, I was part of this club, and one of the things we hosted was this campus-wide game called Humans versus Zombies. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's this game that you play on campus where you use Nerf guns, and like people are assigned to be zombies, and they have like some kind of marking on them to signify if you're a human or a zombie, and you just basically survive like a week or something on campus, using Nerf guns to shoot the zombies and try to remain human. So from that, I was assigned to make like commercials for it, to raise awareness and interest throughout the campus. And so I made like trailers and stuff, and then I realized that like, wow, I actually really like to film. So that's where that came from. And right now I'm still doing both. I still write from time to time. I've been trying to, like last year and the year before, I was trying to submit like some fantasy and sci-fi short stories to magazines and stuff like that, but haven't really hit anything yet. So now I'm just every November, there's this thing called NaNoWriMo.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, for those just speaking to our invisible audience, if you don't know what NaNoWriMo is basically stands for National November Writing Month, and it's like this unofficial community. Well, it's like an official community, but like you don't get like there's no real prize or anything. It's just everyone joins together to motivate each other to write at least 50,000 words by the end of November. And so I started doing that, I think like 2 years ago. And so far I've been doing it every year, and I've been, dishing out a new draft novel ever since. So that's been going well. And I think my goals now in terms of writing, like when I was younger, I always wanted to be like, oh, like, especially with like my Nintendo fan fictions, I was like, this is great, like I'm going to be famous and everything, everyone's going to love like my Yoshi stuff. And then even when I grew out of that, I was like, okay, I want to like make some money, be the next J.K. Rowling or stuff like that. But now I've kind of grown out of that, and now my main purpose is like, there's stuff that I want to say about life, and I just want it written down before I like die, like I don't want to die midway into like my speech about what I have to say about life and stuff like that. So I'm just basically writing as much as I can before I kick the bucket.
To be fair, you can't replicate like the success that J.K. Rowling had, where if I remember right, she just kind of wrote a beginning part, like she wrote like the ideas she had on a napkin one day and just kind of decided to just expand on that from like once she got home or something.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like Jere said, he just typed, if you're doing a movie, you need a script. I do a lot of, right now, I'm actually working towards making a machinima using Unreal 4. And it's basically like a series that's kind of like a spin-off from one of my sci-fi parody. It's called Space Hotel. It's about like this floating space hotel and, well, space. And it's about like all the crazy hijinks from like everyone who works there and stuff like that. And so far I've written the pilot episode, and I'm halfway through the second and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the other, aside from my writing, that's the other main project I'm doing right now that's not video game associated, unless you count making it a machinima video game related, but whatever.
You do, right? Jared, I'm guessing you spend your time honking horns and playing stock sound effects.
There's the banjo.
Alright,
Does your show have a theme song? Because I feel like Jere could make a theme song with his banjo. That'd be really funny.
And the guitar.
Strumming the blues.
To be fair, last I checked, we already had a theme song from AI, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I think the few shows that I actually listened to, I don't think you had it yet or something, or probably
And the
didn't know so.
accordion.
Oh, he has an accordion too. Like a one-man show here.
So yeah,
That's all he got.
a lot of music.
Nope.
A
Another
different guitar.
Cool.
All your instruments just thrown about here, yeah. But
That's a nice one.
yeah. You do. So yeah, music.
How long have you been doing music, Jere?
He's at least
10 years? 5 years? Cool.
15?
15. That
Yeah.
makes more sense.
Give or take. But
Yeah, the only instrument I ever played was a piano, which I can still technically play. It's just that I never had enough money to actually get a piano. I only have like those crappy Casio keyboards from like the 80s or something, which kind of kills the mood for me.
oh, there's a drum set right there too. Yeah.
Sweet.
I'm more a singer. I don't play instruments so that much. My sister played the piano when she was younger. I don't know how much of that she's retained. But I used to be like part of a. I technically was like I like sang a lot when I was like in grade school, and I kind of just tapered off as I got older because there was no longer any need to be part of a choir when you got into high school and such. We didn't have a choir really. The idea, like, oh no, like we had a choir, but I never had the. I was never bothered to do it myself. So.
Yeah, I never grew up with a choir either, but like in grade school, all we had was like everyone had to play those recorders, like those little flute things.
Yeah, I forgot how that went. Might actually been, but yeah, like there's. So I don't know, unless you really want unless you want like Christmas songs or. That one time, I think I sang "We Are the World, We Are the Children" at like a graduation party. There's not really, I don't have that much experience in the way of singing to anyone who isn't myself.
I see. Sing in the shower?
It's more like I just kind of sing while I'm mowing the lawn because it just kind of.
Hi ho, hi ho.
It's mostly just what ends up being in. It's mostly what's just in my head at the time. It kind of keeps my mind off of like being incredibly like tired at times, or like
that kind of music.
But yeah, I think we've covered a sizable amount of like stuff and such, unless we are coming up on an hour now.
I think we are. I think I have to go soon.
But either way. But yeah, either way, we have enough that we can make an episode out of this, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, it's been nice having you, Scotty.
Thanks. It's been nice having thanks for having me on.
And sang along with Jere and myself. And as usual, we'll catch you all in the next couple of weeks where we have the same sort of where we basically spend an hour or so talking about general nonsense. Until then, we'll catch you at that point, one time or another. Everyone say goodbye.
See you when we see you. Ciao.